The Forest That Counted Shadows. English Story Level 5. Deep in the northern realm lay the Duskwood, a forest so ancient that even the oldest scholars couldn't trace its beginnings. People feared it for one strange reason. The forest counted shadows. Every traveler who entered noticed that their shadow multiplied first into 2, then 3, then countless faint silhouettes flickering across the trees. Some said the shadows were memories. Others whispered they were warnings. But whatever they were, no one stayed long enough to learn the truth. Ciaran Averill, a young naturalist, had spent years studying unusual ecosystems. When he heard legends of the Duskwood, he felt an irresistible pull to uncover its secrets. Armed with journals, lanterns, and marking tools, he ventured into the forest at dawn when the light was softest. At first everything seemed normal. Sunbeams streamed through branches, and the air smelled of pine and moss. But within minutes, he noticed something unsettling. His shadow stretched unnaturally long, even though the sun was directly above. As he walked deeper, additional shadows appeared. They moved with him, but not always in perfect sync. One shadow lagged slightly behind. Another turned its head more slowly. Ciaran, both terrified and fascinated, sketched them in his notebook. The forest was silent, too silent. Even birdsong seemed to fade as if swallowed by the tall trees. Yet Ciaran pressed on, determined to understand what the forest was counting and why. Hours passed before he discovered the first sign of another presence, a stone pillar covered in carved silhouettes. Each silhouette looked different: tall, short, armored, hooded, young, old. Ciaran traced the grooves with his fingertips and felt a pulse of cold energy. Suddenly, one of his shadows peeled away from the forest floor and aligned itself with a carved silhouette. The pillar's symbol shimmered faintly. Ciaran realized the shadows were drawn to forgotten stories engraved in the stones. He continued exploring until he reached a vast clearing. In its center stood a towering monolith carved with spiraling runes. Dozens of shadows from the surrounding trees danced around it as if pulled by an invisible current. Ciaran approached cautiously, but the moment he neared the monolith, the ground vibrated. The shadows merged into a single form, a tall, translucent figure with hollow eyes and a voice like wind pushing through old branches. The figure introduced itself as Orinthos, the archivist of shadows. Long ago, the Duskwood had been created as a sanctuary to preserve the memories of lives forgotten by time. Every person who entered the forest contributed fragments of their past moments of fear, courage, regret, joy, which took the shape of living shadows. These shadows, Orinthos explained, ensured that history was never lost, even when names and faces were forgotten. But the archivist warned Ciaran that the forest was weakening. Fewer travelers visited now, and modern cities grew farther from the Duskwood. Without new memories, the shadows faded, and the monoliths cracked with age. If the forest died, so too would countless unrecorded moments of the world. Orinthos asked Ciaran for help, not to save the forest by force, but to share its truth with others so they might choose to visit and contribute their stories willingly. Ciaran agreed. As he prepared to leave, Orinthos touched his forehead, granting him a gift, a living shadow fragment that followed him like a small echo. It carried pieces of the Duskwood's ancient knowledge. When Ciaran emerged from the forest, the fragment shimmered under daylight, forming quiet patterns that only he could see. Returning to the city, Ciaran wrote extensively about the Duskwood. At first few believed him, but his writings grew popular among wanderers, historians, and curious travelers. Soon people began visiting the forest again, not out of fear, but wonder. The Duskwood revived, shadows dancing brighter than before. Ciaran continued his travels, always accompanied by the small echo shadow, knowing he had become part of the living history he sought to understand.